Hello, friends! Which country is the most powerful in the world? Which is the ultimate superpower? If you can't answer easily, think about it this way. Whose economy is the largest? Whose GDP exceeds $25 trillion? Whose companies are the most famous? And whose films influence the global culture the most? Who has won the most Nobel Prizes? Who dominates the Olympic medal counts? And whose military is unmatched? The answer to all of these is America. But the real question is, how did America become a superpower? Let's break down the history and understand that in today's video. This chart shows each country's contribution to global GDP over the last 2,000 years. Before the 1800s, India and China were the world's two biggest economic powerhouses. Most global trade and economic activity revolved around them. And this remained true for nearly 1,800 years. But after 1900, in just a single century, America rapidly gained dominance and captured a massive share of the global economy. In 1492, the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus arrived in the Caribbean islands near North America. This opened the gateway for European colonization. At the time, the land was inhabited by Native Americans, who belonged to numerous distinct tribes. South America was mostly colonized by Spain, which is why it is known today as Latin America, and why Spanish is spoken across most of the continent. Around 1600, Britain and France also began establishing colonies in North America. Initially, these three powers, Britain, France, and Spain, controlled the region. Tragically, in the decades that followed, the Native American population declined by 80 to 90%. This was mainly due to deadly diseases brought over by European colonizers, like smallpox and influenza, against which the native populations had no immunity. Decades later, on July 4th, 1776, American revolutionaries declared their independence from the British Empire, and the United States of America was born. America's economic graph really started rising after 1850. By then, British, French, and Spanish colonizers had occupied territories all over the world. America had established itself as a growing democracy. As new territories faced the choice of becoming colonies of European empires or joining the United States, many preferred America because they were promised the same freedom and democratic rights as other U.S. states. This is how regions like Florida, Illinois, and Ohio eventually integrated into the country. In 1836, Texas gained independence from Mexico, and following years of political tension, it chose to join the United States. One by one, more states joined, and the nation kept expanding. But don't mistake America for being entirely peaceful in its growth. While democratic, it was highly focused on territorial expansion. In 1867, America purchased Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million. In 1898, the U.S. overthrew the Kingdom of Hawaii and annexed it. While America wasn't a traditional colonizer like Britain or France, its actions, from some perspectives, looked very similar. That same year, under President William McKinley, the U.S. took control of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, paying Spain $20 million for the Philippines. However, the Philippines gained full independence from the U.S. in 1946, meaning that massive financial investment was short-lived. By 1900, America had grown into a vast country, and naturally, a bigger territory meant a booming economy and a soaring GDP. Where did the two world wars take place? Mostly in Europe and Asia. France, Germany, the UK, and Italy were devastating each other, while America initially sat on the sidelines. Even though the US eventually entered the conflicts, the wars were never fought on American soil. While many brave American soldiers lost their lives, the domestic economy remained untouched. In fact, America heavily profited by selling weapons, food, and supplies to its allies, like Britain and France, while the major European powers were left financially ruined. When these wars broke out, Europeans feared their local currencies would collapse. To protect their wealth, investors started buying US dollars because America was safe, stable, and isolated from the destruction. As a result, the value of the dollar skyrocketed. In 1944, near the end of World War II, 44 Allied nations met and agreed to peg their currencies to the US dollar, which was backed by gold. When the Allies won the war, the US dollar officially became the world's primary international reserve currency. Soon after, global institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the United Nations were established, with America playing the leading role. After 1950, America and the Soviet Union emerged as the world's two competing superpowers, marking the start of the Cold War. This was a fierce ideological battle between capitalism and communism. Rather than fighting each other directly, they waged proxy wars in smaller nations. Wherever the U.S. believed communism was spreading, it intervened, sometimes funding opposition groups, backing rebel forces, or secretly overthrowing governments.
For example, during Operation Cyclone, the U.S. funded Mujahideen fighters in Afghanistan to counter Soviet influence, which inadvertently sowed the seeds for future instability in the region. Similar covert operations and interventions occurred in countries like Brazil, Chile, Argentina, Iran, and the Congo.
Because of this deep involvement in global politics, many nations became dependent on Washington, making America incredibly powerful. Today, the U.S. operates more than 800 military bases in over 70 countries. Sustaining this global reach required massive defense budgets, which is why America possesses the most advanced military on Earth. In 1949, the U.S. formed the NATO alliance with Western European nations to counter the Soviet Union, a powerful coalition that remains highly relevant today.
It is important to note that American foreign policy has shifted depending on who was in the White House. Presidents like Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump often emphasized military strength and unilateral action. Others, like Woodrow Wilson, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Jimmy Carter, and Barack Obama, focused more heavily on international diplomacy and peaceful alliances. Woodrow Wilson, for instance, championed the creation of the League of Nations, the precursor to the UN, to maintain world peace.
Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, America was left as the world's sole undisputed superpower. Beyond geopolitics, America's secret weapon has always been its ability to attract global talent. Countless brilliant minds, like Albert Einstein from Germany, Elon Musk from South Africa, and Indian-born leaders like Satya Nadella moved to America because its culture and policies heavily rewarded innovation and entrepreneurship. But despite being a global superpower, what is daily life actually like for the average American? The reality on the ground is complicated. America has severe wealth inequality, where the top 1% holds a massive portion of the nation's wealth. Its healthcare system is notoriously expensive. Student debt sits in the trillions, and gun violence remains a critical issue, with hundreds of mass shootings occurring every year. If those trillions of military dollars had been spent on public welfare instead, being a superpower might mean something different to its citizens. Today, countries like Norway, Denmark, and Sweden easily surpass America in human development indexes. Their militaries aren't global powerhouses, but for the average citizen, the quality of life is arguably much better. If there is one major takeaway from this history, it is this. A nation's true success shouldn't be measured by its military dominance or superpower status. It should be measured by how well it takes care of its own people. Perhaps the dream of being a global superpower is best left as just that, a dream.